Overrated. Quite possibly the worst word an athlete wants to hear in reference to their name, but someone's got to be overrated. That's just the way it goes. Players become overrated by a variety of people, by fans, media, and family members alike. But one thing's for certain, a lot of people's opinions differ on this subject. People see the game through different lenses, whether objectively or subjectively, so opinions are bound to differ. With that being said, some players are objectively overrated. Like, there's no way you can possibly think he's that good. He averages 10 points a game. Anyway, so today I'm here to share my All-NBA most overrated team, the most overrated player at every position. Disclaimer, my opinion is the only right opinion. All players stated as overrated are factually overrated. All other opinions are wrong. I'm just playing. Please don't get offended if I flame your favorite player. And also, if you enjoy the video, like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get back into it. Before we do anything, let's first clarify the definition of overrated. Overrated is defined as rated or valued too highly, an overrated player. This doesn't imply that the player is not good or that they aren't competent. Remember that. So first up, at the point guard position is Hawks guard Trae Young. Don't get me wrong, Trae Young is a fantastic player, but I've heard people say he's a solidified top 10, even top player in the league. That's nuts to me. If you look at his numbers, they're pretty insane. 28 and 10 this year is hard to argue against. But for me, his playoff performances as of yet don't make him a top 10 player, amongst other things. His conference finals run last year was pretty decent, but his efficiency was pretty poor throughout, especially from 3. And this season in the playoffs obviously wasn't a good showing, but I actually don't hold this one against him too much because, it was pretty tough. They were doubling him at every chance, and some of his teammates weren't up to playoff scratch. The main problem for me is that people think he's a godsend of a shooter, when in reality, he has to be one of the most overrated shooters in the league. Oftentimes, he bombs long threes for no reason to show he's got Curry-like range, when really instead he's a career 36% three-point shooter. This year was much better for him, but people act like he's a top 5 shooter in the league just because he hits some logo threes. And because of his supposed incredible shooting, people often rank him much higher because they think he's more dangerous because he can shoot from 55 feet occasionally. His long bomb hoisting is part of his shot selection issue, where he takes a lot of unnecessary, contested, and deep off-the-dribble shots that drop his efficiency, and this is evident in playoff time. His defense is also horrible, but everybody knows this. He's also very ball dominant, which makes sense because he's the best on his team. But sometimes his excessive ball dominance really hurts the team, and it really hurt them in the playoffs, although it wasn't all his own fault. If he figures out how to move more and work off the ball like Steph, it would be a huge benefit for his game and his team. Trae is a fantastic player by almost every account, but I think he's a bit overrated. Someone who's even more overrated than Trae Young is Lakers guard Talen Horton-Tucker. The way Lakers fans talk about THT and the way the Lakers front office value him, you'd think he's a top 5 young player in the league, but it's really not even close. The confusing thing about him is that he's got a pretty smooth game, but it doesn't really translate into anything tangible. He averaged a career-high 10 points this season, which seems pretty decent, but he's supremely inefficient from the field. 41% from the field is pretty bad, but 27% from 3 is horrible as a shooting guard. Lakers fans really think he's on par with other high-valued young assets too, like Tyler Hero and Tyrese Halliburton. He's not even close. I also don't want to hear, he dropped 40 points. The season was over, nobody cares anymore. I could have dropped 40 points in that game. Anyway, he's a decent player, but his value is way too high for who he actually is. At the small forward position, the most overrated player in the NBA is Dillon Brooks. Memphis Grizzlies wing Dillon Brooks is one of the most frustrating players to watch. As a Grizzlies fan, I have no idea what Dillon is going to do when I watch him play. And that's not a good thing, by the way. Dillon is obviously a huge part of the Grizzlies and their culture and why they were so good this season and how they've developed such a nice young core. But I think it's time for him to be traded. His shot selection is so bad. His go-to, for starters, is the most efficient shot in the NBA, the contested mid-range pull-up, and he loves to jack up shots for no reason. If you watched any part of the Warriors-Grizzlies series, you could see what I'm talking about. The problem is that sometimes he hits these shots, so then he gets propelled into shooting more of them, and then he doesn't stop. His defense also is very strong, but he always gets into foul trouble, and a lot of the time, it's because he commits dumb fouls. Sometimes, I think he just empties his brain cells outside before the game and runs around. That must be the only explanation for some of the stuff he does. In 2021, after the Jazz faced the Grizzlies in the playoffs, and Ja and Dillon played well, some people were saying Dillon was as good or even better than Ja. I don't want to hear that ever again. Dillon is a quality player and the heart and soul of Grizzlies culture. But sometimes after watching him play on the court, the intangibles he brings to the Grizzlies don't seem worth it. Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors is the most overrated power forward in the NBA. Most people love or hate Draymond. I'd say I'm more in the middle, but sometimes I can't understand why people think he's so good. Draymond is clearly a very intelligent player on the defensive end and coordinates everything for the Warriors down there. But a lot of the times he commits dumb fouls and gets out of control. He's also not an elite rim protector either. On offense, he's a liability when it comes down to being a real scoring option. Everybody was celebrating when he scored more than 8 points a game in the finals. This is a professional NBA player who's been in the league for a long time. He's not a rookie playing in his first finals or someone who's 40 years old and can barely move. He's a good facilitator, but his impact in that sense is not as high as it once was, or as people say it is. Because the Warriors are so good and have won so much, it seems like when people talk about them, they talk without a lot of tangibility. And although many would say you need to use the eye test when talking about Draymond, my eyes tell me he's overrated. He's no doubt a Hall of Famer and a fantastic player, but for me, he's the most overrated power forward in the NBA. To round out my All-NBA Overrated Team at center is Minnesota Timberwolves center Karl-Anthony Towns. Cat is obviously supremely talented offensively in terms of shooting the ball as a center, but for how big and dominant he can be inside, he shoots way too many threes. On defense, he's notoriously one of the worst defenders at the center position. He can't switch on guards, and he's just not great in general on that side of the ball. In the Grizzlies series, he clearly showed progression on that side of the ball and put in a lot of effort, but he committed too many dumb fouls. For being a number one option and a star in this league for 7+ years, he's shockingly unintelligent on the floor in terms of shot selection, fouls, and keeping his emotions in check. This isn't good for your supposed leader of your team and your franchise player. Cat is still efficient on offense as a shooter and overall scorer, but people use how good he is on offense to mask his holes overall, and he isn't good enough there to justify this. Thus, he's overrated for me. There you have it, my All-NBA Overrated Team. The most overrated player at every position. At point guard is Trae Young, shooting guard Talen Horton-Tucker, small forward Dillon Brooks, power forward Draymond Green, and at center is Karl-Anthony Towns. Let me know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with my 5. Remember, it's just my opinion. Check out my latest video here on if Russell Westbrook will ever be an All-Star ever again. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And as always, stay rested. See you in the next one.